Kimball, and I'm from Planet Whizbang. And today in this video I'm going to give you an overview of my Whizbang cider making system. The Whizbang cider making system is remarkably efficient. There are three things about the system that I'll explain that separate it from all the other home-scale cider making systems and make it really a better system. But I want you to know from the beginning here that the Whizbang cider making system I'm going to show you is all detailed in this book. It tells you everything you need to know. Also, in addition to this, I have my website, whizbangcider.com, and there you'll find a lot of pictures and a lot of explanation to go with the book, to go with this presentation here today. I have all these apples here. My wife actually picked all of them. They were free. They're not sprayed with pesticides. They're in pretty good shape. This is a good apple year in central New York. There are different kinds of apples here. I don't know the kinds, but I know they're different because they look different. And to make good cider, you need a variety of different apples. The mixture of different apples is what makes cider good. And here we have an example of an apple that we may not want to throw in the mix. Got some damage. That's to be expected when you're dealing with free apples that have not been sprayed. So a lot of people do not wash their apples when they make cider, but I tend to like to wash the apples to some degree, or at least rinse them off. And I have my outdoor sink here for that, and I have my toe tapper faucet switch, which is a thigh tapper here, and I just hit it, and I have my sink. I fill it with water. I guess we'll get the book out of here. Some people use a dilute bleach solution. We don't. We just rinse these off. I'm throwing these in here with one hand. The other hand's on the camera. That's not exactly an efficient way to do this. It might be more efficient to just dump all the apples in. Yeah, just like that. Bob them around a little, rinse them off. Any small amount of dirt on these is going to fall to the bottom of the sink. Okay, hit my thigh tapper. Washing. If you don't have an outdoor sink like that, that's no problem. You just get a tub and you rinse them off. After they're rinsed off, they go, this is a bread tray, and they go into the bread tray where they can drain, and that's that. Okay. Here we are. I'm on my back patio. We've got a patio table here. I have my bread tray heaped with apples. I have 3 varieties here, and what I'm going to do now, got a little cutting board, big knife, got a bucket here for the cut up apples. Now I'll show you when it comes time to grind, which is the really fun part, grinding these apples, that the grinder will actually take these apples whole. If they'll fit into the top of the grinder, and apples as big as this will fit in the top of the grinder, no problem. But an apple like that, I don't know, it might. I'll set that aside. We'll see when the time comes. But it is much easier to grind the apples if you first cut them up a little. The lugs in the bottom of the grinding chamber grab onto small pieces of apple better than they do a whole apple. So it doesn't take a lot of effort to cut these up. If you've got help when cider making time comes, someone can be cutting up a lot of apples pretty quickly. You get a couple people cutting, and a small apple cut in half was good enough. Try not to cut your finger. Here you'll notice, I don't know what happened to that apple. Looks like somebody took a bite out of it, but you can select now you can select out the bad parts of an apple if you find any bad parts. I'm doing this by myself today. Everybody's away. It's a good time to make a movie when there's no interference, but if you're by yourself, it isn't quite the same as if you have a whole group of people. There's a bad spot, mushy, and I don't want that in my cider, so I cut it off, and it's still a little mushy. I could cut more, but you know, even with a little darkness, it's all going to darken anyway. You just throw it in the bucket. I'm going to cut this all up, and then I'll show you the really fun part, which is feeding these into the Whizbang apple grinder. Okay, apples are chopped, and that bread tray of apples yielded 2 full pails of chopped apples, and then a pail of whole apples. So I'm going to feed these in whole. I'm going to feed in the chopped ones so you can see the difference. And then I only had that much waste. I took the opportunity of this video to weigh how many apples I have here, because a lot of people ask, well, how much juice can you get from like a bushel of apples? And so I weighed these. Each of these pails weighed 27 pounds, and this pail of whole apples weighed 12 pounds, and that came up to 66 pounds. And then I took the pails themselves weigh 1.8 pounds. I figured 2 times 3 is 6. I subtracted that, so I have 60 pounds of apples that I'm going to make cider with, and in the end we'll see how many gallons of juice we get from that. Here we are looking at the Whizbang apple grinder. This apple grinder is part of what makes this Whizbang cider making system so uniquely special and efficient. It grinds apples far better than any other grinder I've ever seen or used for a home scale system. It's made with a garbage disposal that's been stripped apart and joined to I believe it's a 1/2 horsepower farm duty motor. If you were to buy just a disposal and use it, you can grind apples with it, but you won't grind apples for long before it overheats. And when it overheats, you can hit the reset button, wait 5 or 10 minutes, it'll come back on, but it'll overheat right away again. For continuous duty use, you need to take it apart and mount the motor to it, and it'll grind all day long without breaking a sweat. It's a joy to use. This particular, I should say that I did not come up with the idea of using a disposal to grind apples, but what I did come up with is the idea of taking the disposal apart and joining it to a motor. I tell how to do this in my book. It's all in the book. Also, at whizbangcider.com, you will find additional information about the disposal to use, kind of updated information, and I show in pictures how to take it apart. Now, this disposal grinder was made in 2008, and it is actually my prototype. I never got around to painting it, making it look nice. It's kind of drab looking, but this is a workhorse of an apple grinder. It is an incredible machine. You're going to see that in a minute. And I want to point out that I have loaned this out to a lot of people. I've loaned it out to church youth groups and friends. I loaned it out a couple weeks ago to a friend who, him and his 3 kids and wife, they made 30 gallons of apple cider. And the only thing that stopped them from making more was they ran out of containers to put the juice in. So this has been used and abused to some degree, but mostly used, and it'll take a lot of abuse or use, whichever. Not abuse, don't abuse it, just use it and it'll take it. And also I want to say that I have used this disposal apple grinder to grind large biochar chunks into small biochar chunks. So, all right, so you're looking at the disposal. The top is HDPE plastic. I have an apple corral that goes on the top to hold a bunch of apples. It's supposed to go on the top. Yeah, that fits like that. The mash, as you'll see shortly, comes out into the pail here. That's the Whizbang disposal grinder for apples. Awesome piece of equipment. Don't judge this grinder by its outward appearance. Judge it by its output, and you're going to see that in a minute, that it's really amazing. Okay, here I am ready to grind. Put the apples into the apple corral. Fill it right up, or pretty close to fill it up. Get it good and full. Now, this is the apple persuader. I tell how to make this in the book. It's designed so that you can jam apples down, and this dowel stops it from going so far that it grinds on the end. But this has had a lot of hard use, and it's kind of worn away some. It's an effective tool, especially if you're going to grind whole apples. Here we go. Okay, hopefully you can see that mash coming out down there, and I'm feeding apples in. The grinder is taking them as fast as I can poke them down in there. Beautiful thing. If you've ever made cider and cranked a hand grinder around and around, you know that your arm and the strength of your arm has its limitations. This electric motor and grinder don't get tired. That mash down there. I'll close up on that mash here in a second. I just want to do a whole pail of apples and show you how quickly you can grind them up. It's okay, I'll put the rest of the pail in. Get my persuader going here. Jamming very hard. I'm just kind of putting a little pressure and directing it down. Children love to do this. There's little chance of them hurting themselves as long as someone makes it very clear that you don't stick your hand down in the chamber. Just keep your hands up here and on this. It's common sense. There was a splash guard on this disposal when I first put it in, a rubber splash guard. It's gone, so we get a little splashing now that I didn't originally get. So there we go. One pail, ground up. I don't know how long it took. It didn't take long. So after grinding that one pail, putting that through the grinder, I want to close up down here on the mash that we've made. It's finely chopped, loaded with juice, self-feeds through this tube. When you get to the end of your grinding, you take take some cider and feed it in through here to kind of flush out the last of the apple bits. And then if you rinse this unit out by spraying water in there for a while, let it flush out. This is easy to clean. That's another great advantage to this. Now, that apple mash was white when it hit the pail. Starting to darken, starting to oxidize. That's normal, that's fine, that's good. And it means you got real apples here. I have ground up the 2 pails of chopped apple pieces. They're down here. I want to show you that full-size apples can also be utilized. Here's the big apple I showed you earlier in this film. It doesn't fit in there But as I'll show you, I can make it fit with my persuader. And then you just saw a small apple fall in. This is a medium-sized apple. This is a large apple, this is a medium apple, and that one will be easier to persuade. But the act of persuading big apples into the grinder is a whole lot more work. I think that will be evident here, but the fact is you can do it. You can really slam the apples in. So let's show this. Small apples. That was kind of a medium. Here's a medium one. You get bits of apple in your face. That's the fun part. But that apple is just spinning around. Big apples, so I'll get another one in there. I'll persuade it. It'll break free here. But this is a good illustration of how chopped up there it just went. It's a whole lot more effort to persuade these down in there than it is to pre-cut them so that they feed in very easily. Small apples, no sweat. They go in real easy. Here's that big one. Well, that was fun. But kids cannot do that. Although they can have fun trying, I'm sure. So this illustrates that the grinder does have the ability to grind up whole apples without cutting them, and in fact will grind up some pretty good size apples. So all 60 pounds have been ground, and we're going to move on to the next stage. Yeah. Pay attention to what you're doing there. Okay, shut it off. Y'all done? Turn the switch off. Good job.
I'm just small.
You want to do more?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.